I actually haven't seen, can you believe it, Jay Leno's appraisal from VinWiki. So let's see what he's got, man.
We are back with the
All right, so we're watching the VinWiki car appraisals. This is of Jay Leno's. He's got some amazing cars. He's got an amazing garage. He's got a McLaren F1. We're going to see what they appraise his cars. These videos are just so interesting to me because you see what they used to cost. They cost when he first bought them. And at that time, he must have been like, oh, this is a huge amount of money. I don't know if I should do this, especially with his McLaren. I think he bought it for like $2 million, and it's worth $18-20 million now. So that was, I mean, obviously he probably would never sell that one, but it's really cool to see how car investments actually work sometimes. Depends on what cars you get. Obviously, you have to be a car guy or girl. You have to be able to sort of see into the future and be like, this car is going to be very valuable. I'm going to get it. Or you just love cars and you just buy one and it happens. All of a sudden it's worth tons of money. But yeah, let's go.
Wiki appraisal panel, but I am not in Atlanta. I am here in Miami with John at Curated. We just shot some content for his channel. It was the right time to pass 50,000 miles on my manual LP640 coupe, and so a good time for a road trip. But today,
something I love about this guy, if you don't know Ed Bullion, he's a really cool guy. He loves cars. He has a bunch of Murciélagos. But he drives them, which I can appreciate. He drives them every day, I think. So that's just cool. If you're going to have a car like that, enjoy it. Experience the thrill. You know? That's what I think.
Today, our video is brought to you by Auto Tempest. Auto Tempest is...
Oh, yes. Auto Tempest is very cool. But they don't sponsor me yet. All right.
What we believe is the most complete list that exists with 185 cars. He's got an unbelievable collection of a huge variety. And so we've got the list, and we'll put a link to the full list in the description. However, we obviously can't talk about 185 cars today.
Obviously.
So just like we did with Ralph Lauren's car collection, we are going to each pick 5, and we'll all appraise each of those 5, and then we'll tell you how much we think all 185 cars are worth. As always, I'm joined by John Tamarian and John Ficarra of Ficarra Classic. Thank you guys for being with us as always.
Thank you for having us as always, and it's an honor to have you at our showroom today. So, and
yeah, I wish I was there instead of soggy California. You guys are in sunny Florida.
Come on, man, you got to come out.
Wait, is California soggy? Maybe at this time. But that California doesn't seem like it would be called normally a soggy place. I don't know. I was born there actually, but I haven't lived there for a while. But yeah, let's see.
Out.
That's it. So I will start with my 5, and the first one that I really like, it's
McLaren
a car
F1.
we've talked about a lot on VinWiki, is the Corvette Pratt & Miller C6 RS. It's a 2006 car. They only made 7 of these. 4 of them actually are black. Jay's is black as well. They were about $330,000 new. They use an 8.2-liter K-Tech naturally aspirated 600 horsepower version of the LS, and I think this one's worth about 250 grand.
I think it's such a cool car. I think there was one on Bring a Trailer.
I've never heard of one.
And it's funny, we've talked about it in sort of discussions with our team of like, what is the next generation of collector cars and future cars, and this is definitely one of them. I mean, Pratt & Miller with their racing history, there's a street car. It's like sort of all the stars align on this car. I'm gonna say it's got to be worth at least MSRP. So, you know, $300,000 plus, just because I think they have a big future.
There you go.
Okay.
Anytime that a real race team touches a car, that means something. It's gonna freaking like over 8-liter engine.
Look at that engine. Beautiful. Like I always say, if you paint your valve covers, okay, it changes the engine. It's just something you have to do on a cool car. You don't have to paint your Toyota Corolla's valve covers. I mean, come on. But I mean, if you want to, it will add value, in my opinion. I don't know how much, but
in it, and I would pay just for those sweet fender vents that it has on it. It's an extraordinary car. It's so customized. Looks like a Corvette, but it's so much more underneath. I put it at least at $300,000.
okay.
Super cool. Next up is something that I have heard Jay considers to be his favorite car, his 1963
Really?
Chrysler turbine car. Turbine, if you're Steve Leto, we've had him on the channel to talk about the cars and how so many of them had to be destroyed. Almost all of them were destroyed. There were 55
Why?
cars built. They were never made to be consumer legal.
Have you ever heard of these turbine cars?
So they were forced to destroy all of them that couldn't
Guess we're
kind of
hearing about them
wind
right
up in
now.
museums. 9 are left, 5 run. Chrysler has 2, the St. Louis Museum has 1, and the Stahl Museum has 1. So he's really the only private owner of one of these cars.
Insane.
Now, in many ways, they're absolutely priceless. They're super cool. His is the orange. Almost all of them were orange. They idle at 22,000 RPM, and it runs on anything that will explode. And it's just one of the coolest things. Now, it was not economical to build these things, obviously, but Jay tells a story about how he saw one when he was 12 years old at the 1964 World Fair and just said, I've got to have them. So,
Wow.
I mean, they don't change hands, obviously. One did change hands recently, but in a very quiet way. I think the one that went to the Stahl Museum. But
Okay.
Look at
they've
that.
always been thought.
Look at the rear end on that thing, man. That looks like like a jet engine exhaust, except miniature. But maybe that's why it's called turbine. I don't know. I don't know anything about these, but that's cool. Also, Jay Leno. How did he get all the money to buy these cars? Like, I know it was probably a while ago when he started collecting, but they still must have been tons of money. I don't know. He just, that's probably what he spent most, if not all of his money on, was these cars, I would guess.
They're like 3, 4, 5, 6 million
Just
bucks.
curious.
I mean, I think his, as a running car, you could find somebody to pay you 10.
Listen, I have to agree. I think there's that generation, cars like the World's Fair cars and cars like these, exotic Geneva show cars.
What did he say? 10,000 or million?
But in a very quiet way, I think the one that went to the Stahl Museum. But
Okay.
they've always been thought that they're like 3, 4, 5, 6 million bucks. I mean,
Yeah.
I think his, as a running car, you could find somebody to pay you 10.
Whoa.
Listen, I have to agree. I think there's that
I mean,
generation.
yeah, if there's that little
cars like
amount.
the World's Fair cars and cars like these, exotic Geneva show cars. Manufacturers were doing just so many special things. We don't see that today. I don't think as much. I mean, we see these show cars that were running and usable. I think that was just such a special period in time. I can't disagree with you, Ed. Maybe I'm going to say $8 million just for the hell of it, but I think that's probably what
Wow.
it's worth. Who knows?
Yeah, when you have such a rare car that never changes hands, who knows?
When it's rare, it's expensive. What can I say? That's how it works. You make something that there's not a lot of, but it's also very cool and valuable and in high demand. The price is just gonna climb. It's gonna climb forever, really.
What they're worth. I mean, if you've ever heard one of these turbine cars run, I heard one of the turbine race cars from the 60s run. It's an amazing sound. And when they showed it around the world, they ran it on like Chanel No. 5 in one country, and they did all kinds of crazy stuff with them. It's a once-in-a-lifetime purchase. I don't think it's worth $10 million. I don't know if the generation around is wanted to buy something like that because it doesn't look. It looks like.
Also, that's a good point. You have to know about this car. You have to know about the history, the story, the fact that there are so little of them. You have to know about that to buy one. That is true. Sad to say the younger generation probably doesn't know that much. I mean, I've never heard of this car before today.
Like a regular car. It doesn't have like a real show car look to it. So I would probably put it around 5 at auction. It might go for more, but I don't know if it would pull 10 these days.
One of the race cars that Jay has is a 1935 Delahaye 135S. this was a road legal Grand Prix level car, and you know, it's something that he actually gets out and drives. It's gorgeous.
Good.
Emile Delahaye made some incredible racing cars throughout his career, and they won a ton of races in cars like this. I don't think this particular chassis was a hugely winning car, but it uses a pretty reliable 3.2-liter engine out of a truck. It has a way you can add oil while you're driving it. I watched Jay's video about it. I think it's so special. I think it's worth about $1
That's how you know your engine burns oil.
I'm not going to disagree with that. I don't know much about, you know, these pre-war cars. I think they're stunning. I'm not going to get in an argument with Ficarra about this. So I'm just going to agree with whatever your Ficarra says.
Fair enough.
Yeah, the Delahayes are stunning. This one doesn't have a whole lot of great history behind it, but doesn't need to. It's a Delahaye. It is certainly a car you want in a real good collection, and of course he has one. I've got it at 1.6.
There you go. Now, he has 6 Duesenbergs, but the coolest one is the J. Walker Coupe. So this has a much more aerodynamic body. It was built at their Indianapolis facility for a local pharmaceutical tycoon. The body is gorgeous. The way the car is coach built, obviously. And it was the most expensive Duesenberg ever built. $5,000 more than the next one. $25,000 new. In 1934.
In 1934.
So,
that's
cool car.
But that means
peak,
now inflation. That's, well, they're probably gonna say, but that's a lot more now. $20,000. The comparison, right? $20,000 back then is probably like, oh, it's a lot. It's like in the hundreds of thousands of dollars now.
On their way down.
Obviously,
like
this car's gonna be more than that, worth more than that. But
I think it would have been worth $4, maybe $5 million at one point. Today, I put it at $3.25.
I do see it.
Yeah,
younger
just measly
collectors
$3.25
bidding on some of these cars, you know, these pre-war cars at some of the auctions. But I think the excitement around these cars is changing. You know, you see a Countach or an F40, you know, come up on the auction block at RM, and there's bids like machine gun fire, where it feels like these pre-war cars are getting harder to sell over time. I'm going to go back about $500,000 less than you, just to be uber conservative.
The Duesenberg market's a little soft right now. I mean, they'll always be one of the great cars. This car is, if you've ever seen it, is intimidating to look at. I mean, it was definitely something you want to drive to scare the poors back in the day.
The poors.
But now, you know, I'm actually going to go under you, Ed. I'm going to say $3 million's probably a number for it. But I don't see them sinking a whole lot more than they have. I think they've kind of settled out. That generation, the great generation that really would pay $5 is kind of going out of the way. But they'll never descend. This will never be a $100,000 car, that's for sure.
The last one on my list is one that I'm sure would have been on all of our list. His McLaren F1, a car that he actually drives a good bit.
That car is
beautiful. Red accent. Doug DeMuro reviewed the car at one point. It's chassis 15.
Good old
so
Doug.
A fairly early car. And I think he's put about 13,000 miles on it, which is absolutely wonderful. He's done a lot of the servicing in-house. Obviously, he's got an amazing team there at the shop. And so I put it at $16 million. I don't think it is a top tier McLaren F1. Not that there really have to be tiers of a car that there's so few of. But of the 106 cars, I think it's a great driver. And I think he paid $1 million or $1.5 million. I mean, he bought it in period when it was, you know, kind of stale new inventory. And so I think 16's the number.
That's just crazy, man. Imagine you buying a car and it's just a cool car, you know. It's a lot of money and you're like, I don't know if I should buy it. I like it though, let me just do it. And then all of a sudden, several years later, it's worth millions more. Like, you can't really predict that, but that'd be so cool. Again, not that he's going to sell it, but.
So I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard a rumor that he had actually gone to Herb Chambers to go see a MIURA SV, and they positioned the McLaren F1 in a way. I don't know if the story's true, but I heard that he then saw the McLaren F1.
If I saw the McLaren just sitting there and I had enough money, heck yeah, man.
They were trying to sell it, because at the time they were very difficult to sell.
Correct.
But looking back, I mean, look what they've done. I actually would say that I believe you're light on that number. You know, I think McLaren F1s have a huge future. I said it in a previous video. I think it's the next 250 GTO. They're rare. They have incredible, you know, race history, and it's considered one of the greatest cars of all time. I'm going to say it's probably 18 to 19 million today. And I will say that
baby.
Jay Leno's provenance probably helps the car too.
Yeah.
He's owned it for
Exactly. There you go, Ed.
years and years and years, and the spec is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there's no arguing with an F1. There's no arguing with Jay's F1. I'm going to split the two of you, and I'm going to put it at 17 million.
So the first car on the list that I chose is a car that for years I had been saying was undervalued. Now today, they've moved a lot in price, and that's the 2004 Porsche Carrera GT.
Oh, these are some awesome cars. This looks like Doug DeMiro's. Manual transmission, V10, beautiful, beautiful cars. Good choice.
Jay's talked about it as being an incredible car to drive. It's I think, one of the most radical supercars ever made. It's the end of an era of analog cars. They're not the most rare cars. I mean, I think there's 600-700 cars in the U.S. that were built for the U.S. market. His is not it's probably the most iconic color, the silver on terracotta. So it's not one of the paint to sample colors or you know, one of the more rare colors like black, yellow, or red. But I still think, regardless, it's got to be worth at least 1.6 million. It's around probably something like 10,000 miles, but it was Jay Leno's Carrera GT.
Yeah. And you can always say that, you know, it being his adds real value. Here we try to talk about what the actual car is worth. I am a little bit bearish on Carrera GTs in general. I mean, they certainly, over the last 18 months, have exploded in value, but I said 1.4 just because I think that that's about where these cars are going to settle in to $1 million for a weak car, $1.5 million for a premium car on the real long-term time frame.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ed, on this one. There's 4 of them coming up for sale later this month, the auctions. So we'll really find out what
they're trying to capitalize on that market.
But I would say a solid car like his is about 1.5 million.
So the next car, I think this is what makes Jay so special as a collector, is he has such a diversity, and it's the Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing that he has, which I think is just so cool because it has original paint. And I know sometimes I get, you know, some people give me a hard time saying a Survivor car, it has patina, but they're only original once, and there's something that speaks to me every time that I get in a car with an original paint, original interior, and it's like it tells a whole different story than a fully restored car. I love fully restored cars. We sell fully restored cars. I restore cars, but they're only original ones. His car is red. I guess Jay found it basically rotting in a trailer in the desert somewhere. I'm gonna say, you know, 300 SL Gullwing prices for a little bit came down. They were like $1 million to $1.4 million.
Oh yeah, super low.
Last year has been wild for 300 SLs. Both Roadsters and Gullwings. I think a numbers matching Gullwing today with this type of patina is got to be a $2 million car.
Okay.
I agree. It's
wow.
Such a great story. The way they resurrected this car in-house and did so much to it. And there are so many cars like that in Jay's collection where he has found a car, identified a car, and been able to take the story all the way to completion. I don't know that it's quite 2 million because I think that is probably reserved for these, like, you know, totally top tier, ultra unique color combinations, things like that. So I said 1.8, but still a ton.
The idea of any car being original, if you ever can touch one of these original unrestored cars, there's something really special about them because they're only original once.
Yep.
Once restored, you've washed all that stuff away, and this one's just a perfect example of an original car, and I love it. And I think, Tamarian, we're going to agree on a price here, and we're going to both say 2 million.
So there is no,
and that's the thing that I talk about with junkyards, right? You walking through the piles of cars on top of each other, cars in the corner, cars underneath other cars, and you're just thinking about the story, like, how did this car get here? Especially when you come across a really cool car and you're like, wow, it's just sitting here in a junkyard waiting for someone to rebuild it. The history and stories of cars are important. They're super important. You know, for car lovers, they are. You got to appreciate it.
denying that Jay is a massive Lamborghini fan, and I think he's always talked about loving Lamborghini more than Ferrari. I don't even think he owns a Ferrari at this point. And he's always been a huge Lamborghini Miura fan. And this next car is such a great story because it sort of describes just exactly how the car collector community was at one point. And Jay actually got this car for free. And the car tells such a special story. It was a Lamborghini Miura P400 that was purchased new from the Bob Estes Lamborghini distributor in California by the one and only Dean Martin of the Rat Pack. And
Dean
fame,
Martin,
it was
baby.
actually purchased for his son, who would drive the car to high school. So,
oh my gosh.
Incredible.
Can you believe having a father with that much money? I mean, it's hard for me to imagine, but to drive a car like that to high school, possibly even his first car, like, oh yeah, Dad, can I just get the Lamborghini Miura, just the coolest Lamborghini ever, to drive to high school? I wish I could say that. I mean, I can say it. You can always say it. I would never get one.
Story. I don't know the exacts of the story, but he apparently...
My dad wouldn't even buy me a Corolla. Just saying.
He was hot rodding a little bit, cracked the oil pan or the transaxle, and the car sat around in disrepair. Jay was buying a bunch of cars out of a collection or something like that, and he asked the guy, what's under that cover? And basically said it's a Miura, and he goes, hey, if you want it, you can take it. So he got the car for free. It's a original yellow with blue car, so very, very rare. Incredible color. And Jay obviously fixed it and drives it and enjoy it. And that's another thing about Jay is he's actually a mechanic himself.
Yeah,
so
that's
really,
awesome.
Really commend him. But he loves his Miuras. We'll talk about another Miura he has as well. I'm going to put this car all day at 1.7 to 1.8. I'm personally getting excited about it because it's like Dean Martin, Jay Leno. I mean, the history is phenomenal.
The history.
But let's call it 1.8.
A lot of old Lamborghinis have great celebrity ties, everything like that. But I mean, it doesn't get any cooler than Dean Martin's Miura that transacted for no money at one point. I think the story adds a solid 20% to the value. So I'm going to say $2 million. But if you were going to own one that wasn't an SV, how do you not want this above everything else?
I'm a huge fan of the Rat Pack. I always have been. And if I had to have a Miura, I would kill to have this thing. And yeah, I agree with you, Ed. If the Dean Martin story, for me, I would pay an extra 20% all day long, $2 million.
And the next car is his Miura S. And it's talking about the Rat Pack. I'm a huge fan as well, Piccara. So Mr. Frank Sinatra also was a well-known Miura owner. He actually had an S with shag orange carpet. That car traded a few years ago. Incredible car, orange car, just like the orange S of Jay Leno. And listen, S's are very rare when you compare them to the P400s. P400 Miura were I would say a little bit more crude. They were sort of developed over time. A lot of the cars had, roll-up windows. They didn't have chrome trim. Where the S got the chrome trim, it got the electric windows. They got AC, vented disc brakes as production went on. So S's historically bring more than a P400, less than an SV. But I think this is a phenomenal car. It's a late S.
Yeah, it's awesome.
69 car. And I'm going to put this car at probably 1.95, 1.9 million.
That makes perfect sense, and certainly you're the guy to speak to that. If I'm buying a car, I'm going to buy it for the story rather than it being a fundamentally slightly better 1960s car. So I'm going to put it 20% back to where I had the Dean Martin car and say 1.6.
So my 20% just drops it back to what it should be. So I think they're both worth $2 million, but the 20% bump was for Dean Martin on the yellow one.
And then the last car is the Blastoline Special. Now, this is a complete oddball. It's a famous part of Jay's collection. It was built in 2001 by a famous hot rod and sort of metal crafter, Randy Grubb. It's got a tank-powered engine.
Tank-powered engine. Wow. Every man needs a shop with a couple cool cars in it. You know what I'm saying? Like this garage is just so cool. All the decoration, everything. This is like a dream. This is just a side point, but yeah, these cars are. such diverse taste, such diverse interest. He just loves cars. This man loves automobiles. And I can appreciate that. I do too. I'm not like one brand loyal. Oh, I only like Chevy, I only like Ford, I only like Dodge. No, I appreciate good cars. No matter what brand they are, I don't care. If they're a good car, I like them. And it seems like Jay's like that too. So I respect the man.
Transmission, absolutely insane. This is only something Jay Leno or somebody like that would build. I think it looks incredible as well. I mean, it's so masculine. It's so cool. It's really hard to value.
That is
this,
cool.
I doubt would happen. You know, this car is synonymous with his character as well. So you have to add, you know, his name to this car. So in my opinion, it could be a $700,000 to $1 million car. A lot of these really, really special hot rods can demand that type of premium depending upon who the builder is. But for argument's sake, let's say $800,000.
Exactly. I think there's no more Jay Leno car than it's gigantic. It makes all the crazy noises in the world. I said 500 grand. Generally, when you spend a ton of money building a hot rod or modifying a car, customizing a car, you're talking pennies on the dollar coming back. And I can't
never
get driving that.
Exactly. I can't imagine what was spent to build the thing. Limitless. But I think if it was really going to sell, apart from Jay's provenance, I think $500,000.
Yeah, I've had the privilege of actually seeing and sitting in. I never got to drive some of the other Blastoline cars. They are handmade cars, but it's beyond like just building a car. They are artists, and they put so much thought into every bolt head and everywhere everything is on it. They're extraordinary works of art to begin with. Then you've got it's a tank engine car that drives on the street. Then you got Jay Leno.
That's crazy.
And there's only one of them, and there will always be one of them. Blastoline builds one car, and they move on to a whole different concept. I think that if this ever changed hands, in a heartbeat, some maniac would drop $1 million on it without breathing hard.
There you go.
You're probably right. All right, what were your 5, Ficarra?
Jay's collection, to me, is really about how eclectic it is, how he covers all the weird little niche corners of
That's
the
what I'm saying.
Market.
That's awesome.
But I'm going to start with a very, very conservative one. I'm going to start off with his Type 51 Bugatti. I did a video on Leon Duret. He drove a Miller 91 in Indy. The connection between those is that the Miller 91, he sold 3 of them to Bugatti when he was out in Europe. And Bugatti took that engine, the amazing straight 8 supercharged dual overhead cam engine from the Miller 91, and they reverse engineered it and built the Bugatti Type 51. Now the 51 came after the 35. There's a lot of numbers flying around here, but 35 was a really successful race car. By the time the 51 came along, the state-sponsored cars of Alfa Romeo defeated it, and then the state-sponsored cars from Mercedes, the auto unions, and the Mercedes-Benz, the German cars, they crushed everybody. So Bugatti's days as a great race car were over. Doesn't mean this car is anything less than being amazing.
And then Bugatti's like, you know what? Let's build the Veyron. Let's build the Chiron. Let's build the fastest cars, the fastest production cars ever. Let's just do that. Yeah, Bugatti, man, they're doing it right.
It is a cornerstone of any collection to have one of these Bugattis, to drive one. They're small and nimble and light and powerful, and they're fantastic.
Yeah, imagine.
I just love it. I love that
tiny car.
That can sit next to something like a Volkswagen Bug in his collection. But I put this car at $3.2 million.
There you go. I mean, it's definitely special. I love your story about Duret, or whatever his real name was. But that I put 275 on this one.
I'm going to agree with Ed. I'm going to say, 2.7.
So coming up next, we're going to go to the other end of the value scale. Another car I love of his is his Corvair YENKO Stinger by Chevrolet. Of course, the Corvair was the car that was, unsafe at any speed, and Nader went after it. And General Motors built those for more years than they should have, just to prove that it was a good car. Don Yenko got a hold of him. he was kind of the Carroll Shelby of General Motors, and he built his first cars were Corvairs. He eventually moved into
That's a
Camaros
beautiful
and
car.
trick them out, giant engines. This Yenko Stinger is a stage 2. They built 1, 2, 3, and 4 stages. They were all built as to be race cars, SCCA type stuff. They were 200 horsepower or even more. They had the great air-cooled flat 6. A lot of people call them the America Porsche, but it really isn't.
No,
I think one of the
pretty car,
prettiest cars that General Motors built.
I like
in
the
the
color
60s
combination.
was that second generation Corvair. This car, regular Corvair's 10, 15 grand for a nice sorted car. I think this one sits at about 85,000. If it were a stage 3 or 4, it'd probably be breaking 6 figures.
Dang, why are there so many ads, man?
This guy was going just a little over the speed limit. Look at the
Come
damage.
on.
I figured, it has to be 100 grand just because it has such a great story. It's such a unique thing. They are so rare. There's got to be somebody out there that will write a 6-figure check for it.
I agree with you. It's interesting, Fakari. I always learn something from you.
It's
I
true.
did not know that Yenko.
There's a price on everything. There really is. If people want it bad enough, they're gonna pay for it if they have the money. It's just the truth, man.
Started building Corvairs. In my eyes, he was always known for Camaros, and so incredible history. I'm gonna say $100,000 as well.
All right, my next car is, now I'm going to do a Lamborghini. I know we already did Miuras, and you guys are into kind of Diablos and things like that. But of course, I'm into the weird Lamborghinis. This is a car that I wanted desperately as a kid, and I could have bought one for $10,000 when I was in college, and I couldn't afford it or work on the V12. And that's the 4-seater front-engine V12 Espada. They were designed by Gandini.
Yeah, you never hear of these cars you just never hear of them.
Dini, who designed the Miura and the Countach. This was his take on a 4-seat GT car. People either love them or hate them. I love it. I think this one is a Series 2, which I think is the sweet spot in between. With a 4-liter V12 up front. Room for, literally, I fit in it. You could fit 4 guys my size inside of it, although it doesn't look that way. They're really cool. I think they, it's unfortunate they're not worth more, but I guess it's fortunate they are not worth more, because I want to buy one someday. His was restored cosmetically and mechanically, so it's probably one of the nicest out there. It's his car. He drives it, and I know I'm pushing up Espada prices by saying this, but I think that his car would probably sell for about $175,000.
The Espada is such a cool car. I mean, it was such a statement from Lamborghini when it first came out. The original prototype was the Marzal, and the doors came up. It actually had a glass roof. I mean, it was just completely insane. And that's sort of the special factor, this unique factor of Lamborghini, is always pushing the boundaries of everything. I love Espadas. I think they're great. I don't buy them because you could restore one for more than what the car is actually worth.
Yeah.
So if you restore an Espada, you have to be a very, very passionate individual. You have to really love the car.
You have to love the car. It's not for money.
$300,000, and that's what the car is worth. A Series 2 is probably one of the more desirable. There's Series 1, Series 2, Series 3. Series 3 have these horrible, bumperettes. The interior's different. I love the Series 1 and Series 2s. Maybe one day I'll get one. I don't know. It's just so cool. I agree with you, John. They're awesome. I'm going to say it's probably worth a little more if it's been fully restored. I recently saw a junk sell for like $130, $140. So it feels like the Espada market is heating up, even if it's not much. But I'm going to say $200,000 for a Series 2 fully restored Espada.
My gut was 150, but I think your logic is entirely sound. I mean, it's other than a Gallardo, it's probably the cheapest Lamborghini that you could actually buy.
I was gonna say,
and it's
for a Lamborghini, that's not that bad, especially for a really old historical one like that. But again, they're not well known. They're not like sleek, amazing cars. But if you like stuff like that, then not bad.
That you could take anywhere, and guys like us just go nuts over. And so, you can't go wrong, but I'll stick to my 150.
All right, my next car is another one of his oddball cars, and probably one if you drove into a Cars and Coffee. Nobody would ever have seen one in their lives. It's the Monteverde high-speed 375S.
Never heard of it.
Nowadays, a hybrid is a combustion engine and an electric motor. Back then, a hybrid was a European car, and they would get these beautiful bodies made by Touring or Bertone, and they put them on a chassis, but they couldn't afford to build their own engines like Ferrari could. So they would just come to the United States, they'd pick up a Chrysler 440 and just plunk it in there, and they'd have 375 horsepower. That's the reason this is called a 375S. And it's a beautiful body. I think it's a really attractive car. It's a super car that you could then work on at the local garage. I mean, literally the whole drivetrain is American, so there's nothing terribly expensive about working on that. You just have these gorgeous bodies and a really affordable.
That's cool. There literally is nothing wrong with that.
And a huge grunt from a big American V8. They didn't make many of these, and they're all handmade. So I put this at $275,000.
This is a car I had no real knowledge of. I certainly looked at it. It is gorgeous. I said $250,000.
It's gorgeous. I think, they're so cool. Monteverde built so many interesting, wacky cars.
Is that the inside of it?
An SUV at one
that
point.
steering wheel is
I will say, I would
beautiful.
feel that if I was buying that car, it would be very difficult to resell. You would have to find an impulse buyer, someone that really loved it. I'm going to be a little bit more modest and say $200,000.
Yeah,
The reason
modest
I think
price,
it's worth a little bit
just
more,
200K.
It was one of 4 that was built with a manual transmission.
Oh, wow.
Well,
Okay.
There you go.
There you go. Anything manual transmission is worth double.
Or more.
All right, my final car.
Yep.
And I had to do one of these because I love the fact that Jay's into steam. Like, his steam cars are so cool, and he's got a wide selection of them. And back in the day, most people forget that cars didn't make that much power at the turn of the century. And a car with 5, 10, 15, 20 horsepower, that's what cars had. And these steam cars were putting out 20, 25, 30 horsepower, which was
those were the powerful cars right there. The steam cars. Those things just chugged along.
phenomenal kind of speed back in the day. So I picked his 1906 Stanley Steamer, the Vanderbilt Cup car. And this was technically a steam race car. The Vanderbilt Cup was held out on Long Island, New York, and it was the race in the United States. It was the premier car race back in the day before Indy came along and took
That's
it over.
awesome.
This is what you went and did. And they bring drivers over from France, and it was a huge international affair. Stanley built this car. You should take a good look at it. It's actually
cars are so fun. You know what I mean? They get you from A to B. You go fast. You get cool in the summer, warm in the winter. It's just cars are beautiful. Like, come on, everybody who doesn't appreciate them, like, what are you even doing?
cool looking. And Jay went in, of course, he's a hot rodder, and hot rodded a steam car. He put in a bigger boiler. It goes faster. I mean, this is a steam car from 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, that can do freeway speeds in California.
Really?
How to put a value on these? They don't exchange hands all that much.
I gotta watch some more videos about that.
It is ancient technology. Would require a very special person to own it. But if I were wealthy and I could get hands of a not Vanderbilt Cup car, I easily drop $250,000, $300,000 just to fire up that boiler and drive down the road, puffing steam. Just amazing.
Yep.
I love that
can see how
Jay has
excited he is
become
about
really the modern champion of these steam cars. I love it anytime somebody finds a car like that resonates so much with them that they really take it upon themselves to evangelize their love for it. And so he has certainly done that with his steam cars. Look, who's going to use the thing? It's a museum style thing, but it's super cool that you could. I said 150 grand.
I agree. I think you have to appreciate Jay's ingenuity and his passion for this sort of all these little eccentric, pieces of automotive history.
Again, I said this earlier, but that's really what a real car lover is all about. It's about the history. It's about the uniqueness. the rarity, the feeling you get when you see the car. That's what it's about.
This wide spectrum of cars, and it's just so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the beauty of car collecting, and we could go on and on and on, is the passion that, you know, if you see a cool bike or you see anything, you know, we're gearheads, so we appreciate it all. That being said, I think
that's
again, it's probably something that's worth $150,000.
So those are the 15 cars that we chose to focus on. Like I said,
Those are
there
the
are
cars.
185 cars that we've identified as part of his collection. You know, to value it is honestly going to be a pretty shocking thing, I think, to most of our audience, because totaling it all up,
is it $1 billion?
These were most of the really big cars in the collection. And so my total was only $83 million.
I think you're maybe a touch light, but I agree with you. You know, he's got this wide array of stuff that is very unique. But I think, you know, if he ever did decide to sell the collection, I'm sure that there's someone that would pay $100 million to say they got Jay Leno's collection as a whole. And I actually heard that rumor years ago that someone was interested in buying his complete collection.
You know, that's an idea.
Whole. You could create a museum. You could create a business from that. I don't know if it's worth really $100 million, but there is something to say about his collection as a whole. I mean, they make Hot Wheels models now and toys. There's a TV show. There's this. I think it's more than a collection. It's a brand icon.
It's a move.
So I'm going to say $100 million.
This collection is eclectic, but there's also a lot of cars. Like, you know, there's a Volga in there. It's like there's a lot of $10,000 cars in there. I think collectively, street value, the collection's probably around $90 million. But I think you're right.
Just say 100.
I think if this was Jay's collection, and these are Jay's cars, you know, $100 million isn't out of the question. And they're all, you know, a lot of these cars are still going up in value. So just that collection alone would be a wise buy. But the Jay Leno collection, at least for the next 30, 40, 50 years, why people remember who he is, $100 million is not out of the question.
And the only reason I say only $83 million is that when we looked at a $600 million value on Ralph Lauren's collection, a lot of people were like, no way is that the most valuable collection in the U.S., because certainly Jay Leno's is more. And that's one of the most impressive things about it is, you know, who he is as an enthusiast and who he is as a brand has become so iconic, so significant.
Yeah,
and
it's true. I personally heard of Jay Leno's collection before I ever knew about Ralph Lauren. I mean, and I never even watched his late night show. You know, never.
Honest, I think he probably only has $10 to $15 million in purchase price in the cars because they've gone up in value so very much. And so that's what I love, is that every car's got a story, and he is the man. So we'll be back soon with another installation of the VinWiki appraisal panel.
That's awesome.